All right, viewers, this is huge. President Donald Trump has just signed an executive order imposing an additional 25% tariff on India in response to its continued purchase of Russian oil. That is massive news coming in from the United States of America. Trump has slapped an extra 25% tariff on India. What is the breakup of that, viewers? Please do keep in mind all of that happens in the backdrop of India already facing a 25% tariff. And this is an additional 25% tariff that President Donald Trump signed as an executive order, imposing an additional 25% in response to India's continued purchase of Russian oil. So clearly, it's very, very clear now and out in the open that it is really not trade one is looking at. This is geopolitical pressure on India to make a geopolitical choice. The latest that is coming in, and we're going to quickly play that out for our viewers. Big news break. President Trump has just signed an executive order imposing an additional 25% tariff on India in response to its continued purchase of Russian oil. And all of this information disseminated by the President of the United States through a post on the social media platform X. But the implication of that is huge. The trust deficit between America and India at an all-time low. I want to quickly cut across to my colleague Siddharth Zarabi. Siddharth, you know, this war now only escalating between India and the United States of America. One thing now clear, this is not about trade. This is clear pressure to make a geopolitical choice.
Absolutely. And in fact, as we are breaking on our screens, President Trump has signed an executive order which adds another 25% to the existing 25%. Remember, this is supposed to come into effect from the 7th of August, and clearly now doubling this tariff rate. The big question, is this the penalty that he had promised as far as his belief that we are buying crude oil from Russia and financing Russia's war on Ukraine? We don't know the answer to that. But for now, it's very clear that 25 has become 50%, and that clearly puts us at the upper end of his tariff bargain that he's trying to force down the throat of many economies and countries in the world. And this additional 25% really is going to definitely, Preeti, as you said, harden positions, because this is certainly not the act of a friend. Neither is it an act of someone who understands the depth and the dynamics of the India-US trade relationship. And therefore, this 25% additionally on goods will reduce the room for negotiations and conversations between India and the United States. We'll, of course, have to wait for how the government of India responds to this. I imagine that response will also be forthcoming very shortly.
Siddharth, would you stay with me? Because this is big news, viewers. And all of this is when President Trump had threatened to substantially raise tariffs in 24 hours if India did not stop purchasing oil from Russia. So he's clearly pulled the trigger. We are now staring at a 50% tariff. My colleague Rohit is also joining us from Washington with the very latest. Rohit, all of this also in the backdrop, because it hasn't come devoid of criticism in the United States of America itself, because you've had Nikki Haley who came out and said that, listen, China buys oil from Russia, China buys oil from Iran, yet you've given a tariff pause to China and you're ruining a relationship with India.
Yeah, and she did say that, but she also asked and cautioned India not to buy oil from Russia in the same tweet that you're referring to. And President Trump had made his mind very clear yesterday. He said he was going to do it in the next 24 hours, and he's put additional tariffs of 25%, and they go into effect. And I'm reading from the White House release that I have here, is it's going to go into effect from 21 days from now. So this is 25% of tariff, 21 additional tariffs on what he's already put out there. It's going to go from 21 days after the date of this order, which is today. And then in the release that White House has, they've blamed this entirely on India buying oil from Russia and attributed it to the fact that the situation in Ukraine and Russia, India essentially helping out by purchasing oil has allowed Russia to continue this war. So this is big. I think this is massive. To put this in writing in the executive order to say that the reason why he's doing so, that is Donald Trump is putting these additional tariffs, is because they believe in the White House and President Trump firmly believes that India has enabled Russia to continue fighting this war in against Ukraine. So it's a big, it's massive. And I think this is a very, very, I don't recollect in the last 25 years, we've had a low of such kind when it comes to India and US relationships. So 21 days from now, we'll have additional 25% tariffs.
I want to quickly cut across to my colleague Karishma Sudhani, who's also joining us. What really does it mean for India? Because viewers, it just also now narrows the scope of retrieval of talks where it comes down between India and the United States of America. But Karishma, I want you to come in. How much could India now stand to lose if this tariff actually kicks in, which is 50% 21 days from now?
Preeti, we need to understand that a 50% tariff on us is going to be very difficult, and India's trade ministry will have to now look into this specifically. The fact that comes as a big surprise to us. We also need to understand if the pharmaceutical aspect is going to be included in this or not. We were looking if we have the appetite to include already the 25%. Couple of economic reports that have come out recently also spoke of how our total exports on a global scale would be impacted by close to about 1.8%. But with a 50% tariff, it's going to really push us down on the ladder.
Really pushes down on the ladder. What will be India's response? We're going to be, it's going to be coming in quick and fast, because this is huge. Where it comes down to a trust deficit, does it come down to relationship with the United States of America? I would reckon in the recent times, because this is an all-time low. You had the president of the United States of America threaten to raise the tariff if India did not kowtow to what America wanted, which is stop buying Russian oil. And now, seemingly the penalty that he was speaking of in an executive order, which he's just communicated through a post on social media X, the tariff for India is 25% over and above of what it was last, which takes it to 50%. It will come into force 21 days from now, is what the United States of America, the president, says. I want to bring in our Foreign Affairs editor, Geeta Mohan, who's joining us right now. Geeta, what does this mean? India, of course, will be coming out with a quick diplomatic response. Did we think this would happen? Because he had practically threatened it yesterday, suggesting that if we don't do with what America says, he's going to substantially raise the tariff. Geeta, can you hear me? All right, we're going to try and connect to my colleague Geeta Mohan in just about a minute, but viewers, it cannot get bigger than that. Moreover, the relationship between India and America cannot get worse than what it is right now. The latest executive order signed by the President of the United States of America has slapped India with a 50% tariff now. 25 earlier, 25 now. All of this with what President of America says in response to its continued purchase of Russian oil. I want to bring in Rohit back into this conversation, because Rohit, ultimately this is no longer about trade. This is very clear, pushing India to make a geopolitical choice.
Thing that the executive order has in it, written in it, and I'm just looking at it right now. It says, should a foreign country retaliate against the United States in response to this action, I may modify this order to ensure the efficacy of the actions herein ordered, meaning that if India responds with reciprocal tariffs or increases tariffs on America, he may further go and increase tariffs on India again. So Donald Trump making it pretty clear that his stand is firm. He does not want India to purchase oil from the Russians, and he is going to use this as an excuse to A, bring India to the table to get a trade deal done, and B, stop or ask India to stop purchasing oil from the Russians. So this is massive, as I was saying. I think nobody expected it to go as high as 50%. It is going to create a big impact. And essentially, a lot of those sectors that we've talked about all these days and months, in agriculture, about how not allowing the Americans to come and have an open free market. I think Donald Trump is firm that he wants those markets available to American manufacturers. And that was kind of backed by the point that his NEC director said this morning on Fox News that President Trump believes that India could possibly, if it stops purchasing the oil from Russia, could end this war. We saw Stephen Witkoff was in Russia. He had a good meeting as far as the American media is concerned. They've been reporting that it was a good meeting. A lot of people were hoping that it is possible that if the Russians have agreed to some kind of template to achieving a ceasefire, Donald Trump may excuse India, but it doesn't seem so. I think he's come out and laid this order that clearly tells us that it's 21 days from now, there will be additional 25% tariffs on India. And if India were to retaliate, he can increase the tariffs again. Preeti.
Rohit, all of this in the backdrop of India's argument, which practically underlines the hypocrisy of America because it continues to purchase fertilizers and uranium where it comes down to Russia. It has a 90-day tariff pause on China, which is one of the biggest buyers where Russia is concerned. So how does it all match up?
Well, Preeti, that is America for all of us, right? I mean, Americans have always had double standards for things they do versus things they want other people to do. It could be, taking unilateral action against a foreign country if they wanted to. I mean, remember way back when George W. Bush decided to invade Iraq, my bad. Russia, came to the UN and said it's not right. But look what they did. They said they can do it, and they went ahead and did it. So I think all US presidents have been culprit of having double standards to suit their policy, to suit their foreign agenda. And I don't think President Trump is any different. The only factor is, like with other countries that President Trump has negotiated, he has not put a geopolitical issue at the center of of that trade deal. But with India, I think this purchase of Russian oil is irking him into the point that he's ready to take this to war.
Well, stay on with me, Rohit, because, that's 100% correct. This is not trade anymore, viewers. This is blackmail. This is bullying, where you're trying to push India to make a geopolitical choice. 50% tariff is what America has slapped India with, which will be in effect in 21 days from now. What it would mean for India could be devastating, but what would be India's response? Because India has refused to kowtow or bow down to the whimsical demands of the United States of America, especially when it comes down to making that geopolitical choice that America is pushing India to. All of that in the backdrop, viewers, of the sheer fact that America continues to buy from Russia where fertilizers, uranium is concerned, or that there is a 90-day tariff pause on China, and China is one of the biggest buyers where Russia and Iranian oil is concerned. So look at the hypocrisy there. I want to cut across to Brahma Chalani, strategic affairs expert, who's joining me for more on this. Mr. Chalani, I'm sure you expected this because you can expect anything from President Trump now.
It's interesting that he has targeted the three democracies in the global south that are all independent powers: Brazil, India, and South Africa. He's gone after them, and that really shows that the old approach in US foreign policy, with us or against us, that is back at the center of American diplomacy. But more broadly, by weaponizing tariffs, Trump is reshaping America's sanctions strategy. He is now fashioning a new sanctions tool. Tariffs have become the new sanctions, the sanctions of choice. So, for example, when he imposes secondary tariffs on India, he's imposing sanctions on India. And I think the irony is that that in the past, when he was serving the first term, he imposed sanctions on Iran and thereby deprived India of cheaper Iranian oil. Iran traditionally had offered an impressive discount to India, but when he imposed sanctions on Iran in 2019, India then cut off its energy relationship with Iran, and the only beneficiary was China. China became almost the exclusive buyer of Iranian oil and has remained so for the last 6 years. And Iranian oil today remains the cheapest oil on the world market because it sells at a steep discount to the Brent benchmark. So, in other words, Trump hurt India's competitiveness while actually enabling China to accumulate greater economic and military power. That is a short-sighted approach. Now he has turned to India's discounted Russian oil purchases, while the West actually contributes more to Russia's coffers than India does, because the Western trade with Russia far exceeds India's total trade with Russia. So when he talks about India funding Russia's war machine, ironically, it's the West that is funding Russia's war machine in a major way. And now by seeking to target India's Russian oil purchases, what is he seeking to do? He is seeking to make India America's primary energy client. He wants India to ditch Russian oil in favor of higher priced American oil. The US is already a major and growing exporter of energy products to India, but is not satisfied with that. He wants India to actually become the number one importer
Mr. Chilani,
of American energy
the
products.
fact is, usually you stare down a bully. The defiance that India has shown has only led the bully to escalate. Where do you think India should stand now? Because any minute we're going to be expecting a response there. And I'm going to quickly bring in Geeta Mohan. I think we finally have her, but Mr. Chilani, go first, sir.
I think dealing with a bull in the China house, in the China shop, is always a challenge for any nation. It's even a bigger challenge for a country like India that traditionally has been risk averse. India's traditional diplomacy has been very cautious, and therefore dealing with this guy, with an approach that is so brazen and so upfront, is a challenge for Indian diplomacy. But India has to stay composed and has to respond in a measured manner, and yet its response has to be such that Washington should get a message that India will not take it lying down.
That message clearly is not being delivered, Geeta, because whatever has been India's reference points in diplomacy have been completely upended. Where do you see things stand now? Because at least in the last 30 years, this has been an all-time low.
Well, this is an absolute low between India and the United States of America. There have been times where we've seen US not participate or support India on many counts, but this certainly is another level of dipping in ties between India and the United States of America. We over here have the entire executive order that has just been put out by the White House, and it does say that this is additional 25% tariff. That's the penalty that Donald Trump was talking about in response to continued purchase of Russian oil. And they go into the background very interestingly over here. The president talks about how he's got additional information from various senior officials on what Russia has been doing and the situation in Ukraine, which, might I add, was not known to White House in the past. But he certainly suddenly has realized that there's a lot of wrong that Russia suddenly has done, and therefore countries that are dealing with Russia have to be penalized. And India, being one important partner of Russia, is being penalized for that. 50% is huge. India will have to calibrate its response. India already put out a statement saying that while the United States of America wants it to stop buying Russian oil, that the U.S. continues to purchase uranium from and fertilizers from the United States of America. Over here, a very important part also is the fact that there is an exemption that has been offered to things that U.S. wants. So it does say that the executive order shall be imposed and applied to barring those that are eligible for admission under domestic status. Now we'll have to look at what are the what are the products that America is exempting from this 50% tariff. But for now, this is going to be huge. It's going to shake the markets, but it's also going to shake American consumers, not today, but certainly in some time to come when they feel the
Right.
pinch of increased prices because of increased tariffs. Having
Well, you're
said
right.
that,
Right.
it's all about Preeti, who blinks first right now.
You're right there, because eventually, this is a move which I would reckon even economists back in America understand, Siddharth, of cutting your nose to spite your face. But having said that, where India is concerned, and if you're actually looking, Siddharth, at a 50% tariff which kicks in 21 days, that really could be disastrous. So India really needs to work fast.
Well, very clearly, some more details as we go through this 7-page executive order. And because it's an executive order, it is full of US government legalese and bureaucracies. Two clear things. 25% was the earlier tariff that was imposed on all goods from India. Remember, Trump had promised a penalty on account of Russian crude oil purchases. This 25% is on account of that. It is an ad valorem duty, therefore, which means that it's calculated on the value of the goods being imported. So that's clarity at this stage that this is perhaps the threat that he had made when he announced the first 25%. Now, can he make 5,500%? He's done that. He's gone back. We know that there is no method in his madness here really to say as far as customs duties and tariffs are concerned. But that's the point. The key headline at this stage from the executive order is the Russia crude purchases have now led the United States to impose a cost of 25% in addition to whatever else was already being paid. So the Russia threat that he had made has been delivered upon. One more quick point, Preeti, and this is very, very important for us to consider at this stage. The timing, as he had threatened, 24 hours, he's delivered on that. Very clearly, there is a certain response that he may have been expecting. After seeing the response, he has decided to ratchet it up further. But it's therefore the big question will be, has he left any scope for further negotiations?
Right.
And
Well,
I would say that many other nations have come to the table after he's done this. Will India do so? That's the key thing that we need to find answers to.
And what's the way to deal with it? Because till now we've been defiant. Staring a bully down clearly hasn't worked as of now. What are we dealing with? What could be the implications of it? Karishma, would you want to quickly weigh in on that? And we'll go back to Mr. Chalani then.
Yeah, Preeti, I think India is definitely in tight spot, and there have been no bargaining chips that the US has offered us. But what is interesting is, and this is because you were discussing about the negotiations that are pending to happen, especially on the bilateral trade agreement. Look at the timeline. August 25 is the date when officials from Washington are to be visiting India to continue the bilateral trade talks and to seal the deal at least by October so that we do away with the 25% now plus 25% tariff. And around August 26 and 27, if I calculate 21 days right from here, is when this extra additional 25% tariff will come into being. So if the negotiations are going to be on, which is going to be the next big I think information for us to track, then this could be an opportunity for us to roll back. Because if we see currently we are at par with Brazil. We are one of the top, in the top 2 countries to be imposed with a high tariff, despite the fact that we've had a first-hand advantage and we've had multiple meetings with the officials from Washington.
Mr. Chilani, what would be right now diplomatically prudent? Right, is it best to back off a little because we've been very, very defiant, we've dug in our heels, but we don't know who we are dealing with? What would be the best stance for India right now? Sir, you're on mute. Unmute yourself. Mr. Chilani, you're on mute.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, sorry
ahead,
about
sir.
that. Yeah. He has singled out India, The executive order that has been issued by the White House makes no mention of China, which is the primary buyer of Russian energy products. EU and Turkey are also significant buyers of Russian energy products, but it's India that has been singled out in that White House order, and that is quite telling. And simultaneously, and this is the other breaking news that's coming out from Washington, that Trump is planning to announce this afternoon that Apple is pledging $100 billion more investment in the US so as to ramp up domestic production of iPhones. Right now, as you know, the majority of iPhones sold in the US are made in India. So he's seeking to wean Apple iPhone production from India to the US. That's another threat to India. The whole purpose of the Quad was to diversify supply chains. It was designed to make supply chains more not only diversified but more sustainable, more diversified in the sense that taking production away from China to countries that are major democracies. And India was seen as the right place to promote manufacturing, to take manufacturing away from China. And here, Trump is pursuing a policy to take manufacturing from India to the US. So that's another threat that he has opened against India. But to answer your broader question, the question is that Trump has turned disruption into a virtual doctrine of his foreign and trade policies. And dealing with him requires both firmness with diplomatic engagement. You have to balance firmness with diplomatic engagement. And firmness will have to include some countermeasures, that is counter tariffs, because even Canada, which is a much smaller economy compared to India, Canada's response has been to impose retaliatory tariffs on the US. And Brazil is also standing up to US in a similar way. So firmness has to mean more than just rhetorical statements. It has to include what India did during Trump's first term. When he slapped some tariffs on India, India did respond by announcing counter tariffs, and that eventually led to negotiations and the withdrawal of these tariffs on the eve of the G20 summit in New Delhi in September 2023. So I think firmness with diplomatic engagement holds the key.
Is the solution? Well, India has to do what it has to do for self-preservation right now, and I think that's what India would be deliberating, because this is huge news coming in, which takes India's relationship with the United States of America to debatably at an all-time low. The latest that has come in, which President Trump, through an executive order, has slapped India with a 25% penalty extra tariff, which takes the tariff on India all the way to 50%, which is pliable in 21 days from now. All of this, viewers, in the backdrop of the United States of America. All right, let's quickly get in the reactions coming in thick and fast. Listen into Shashi Tharoor.
In these circumstances.
From past a decade, we have seen the entitlement of India to United States. So, can you see all these happening just because of this, sir?
I'm sorry, because of what?
Entitlement of India to US, sir.
No. We engage with all countries. We keep open lines of communication to all countries. Frankly, we were importing goods from China soon after they killed 20 of our soldiers. So it's not as if we have shut down relations with anybody. We are a country that believes in having multiple relations with multiple nations and partners. So I don't think that is going to change. But the emphasis, the opportunities, the degree of involvement, etc., will all be affected by an unfriendly development like this, certainly.
he has already threatened India to impose additional tariffs, and now he has done it. So, what next President Trump wants to achieve, sir? What he is doing now, sir?
I think only he can answer that question, my friend. Don't ask us.
Thank you so much, sir.
Well, that was Shashi Tharoor explaining what India's position has been, that of strategic autonomy, very clearly saying that India has always had ties with countries, including China, even at the zenith of or the nadir of ties between India and China. They did not stop trading, and therefore this entire bully tactic of America should not work, or the Indian administration should be looking at what it is going to do. Now, in terms of response, the Indian side made it very clear that they are going to continue doing business the way they want to, keeping their strategic autonomy in mind. But that was when the percentage was about 25%. Trump came out saying that they are going to penalize India, that America is going to penalize India, and he has done exactly that in this executive order. But he's not just done that. Every time Trump has put out a statement, an action, there's always been what he's going to do in retaliation. And this statement clearly says that in case there is retaliation, there is going to be another order that he will pass to ensure there's retaliation.